Not your thing either, huh?
Emily has always wanted to belong to society. I understood life differently. If you have to conform, you never belonged.
Okay. How did you fall for Vampirella's shtick?
I didn't. My sister vanished. I went looking for her. She's never forgiven herself.
What about you?
I didn't leave her then. How could I now?
You want to try this stupid dance?
Obviously.
So, well, let's get this party started. Before we dive into anything, I just want to, the first thing that I want to say, and I don't know if this is going to live in the video or not, but I do want to say a huge, huge thank you to everyone who worked to make CarmillaCon, the October con, come to life, because I was really excited about it and I was sad to miss it when I wasn't able to attend. But I also want to thank you guys. Grace, Nicole, for joining, and also the Cream Puffs, who are the raison d'etre of the show, and obviously this panel, obviously the No Pants panel, obviously. So, like for the one or two of you who don't know, we're joined today, obviously, by Grace and Nicole. Grace Lynn Kung, who played Charlotte in the Carmilla movie, Nicole Stamp, who played Melanipicalis, never ever referred to by her full name ever in the show, Mel, on season 2, 3, and in the Carmilla movie. I'm Spencer. I directed season 1, 2, 3, and the Christmas special in the movie, and I'm gonna be moderating this panel. Hopefully, not talking so much. So thank you and welcome, you guys.
Hello, hello. Good to see everybody.
So happy to be here. I really had a blast at CarmillaCon, and it was organized so well, and it was so much fun. So I'm happy to be reliving the magic now.
Yeah, virtual con. Con all day, all day.
Some things have happened in the world since. Doing this on Zoom for a very specific reason. Pandemic. How are you guys doing? How has the coronavirus and the global pandemic and lockdowns and all that stuff like impacted you, and how are you feeling? Oh, well, why don't I direct that to somebody? What do I start with? I'll start with you. I'm just gonna go like this. You, yeah, I don't know who it is. No, Grace, why don't you kick us off? Tell us, how are you doing? And I mean, it's hot where you're at.
It's super hot. I don't know, I don't know about everybody else, but it's felt like a roller coaster at the start, what it felt like. And then you were kind of hunkering down and nobody knew what it was going to be. And it felt scary health-wise and concerning for people who are high risk, family members or the immunocompromised. And then you're like, okay, well, we just got to do this. So now, I remember sewing hand sewing masks at the start. And just being like, well, I should just have these. At first, there wasn't a mask advisory, so I was just making them just in case, just to be safe. And now it's like a part of everyday life, and people have masks that show their personalities. And then I feel like it's kind of gone through a point where you hit a point you're like, okay, well, this is going to be real life, and it's going to be real life for a while. So I was doing Ryan Heffington classes. Bless Ryan Heffington for just moving your body. Ryan Heffington's this amazing, vibrant dance teacher, basically, but just has a joy for life, and is just has moves go to the fridge, grab the non-dairy milk, have the non-dairy milk, be ready, spill it all over yourself. So you're it's just it's crazy, but it's so much fun. And it was such a, I needed to move my body in space just when we started, because everybody was just at home. You're just sitting there, eating snacks. And he just made it really fun and having a joy to life again, so, and then you're you'll be out, and then you go out, and all of a sudden the warnings change again, you go back home. So it's like this, and you're just part of you. Some days you feel like you're retired and it's great, and other days you're like, what's going to happen to the world? Are we ever going to be okay? You know?
Yeah. Nicole, was it like that for you? Like did you feel really cooped up, or did you try and get outside, or like what was it like for you?
Yeah, I like there was some like work being done like in my bathroom, so I moved into the basement, and then the work stalled, and so I spent the spring just like living in a basement, like hunkered down, like being nervous to go outside, and it was like the worst. Holy shit, that was bad. And
was it cold? Like, were you cold in the basement? Because
no, the basement wasn't cold, no, but like it was cold outside, and I'm very like sun dependent. Like I had a rough time. There was some other stuff going on, like family stuff, and I was just like, it was exhausting and stressful. And then now I'm a bit of a like science and public health nerd, so I've been like really a bit frustrated about like what I see as some major miscommunications in public health and some big mistakes that have been made in terms of like the priorities that we've been told to maintain around COVID. Like there's all this obsession with like deep cleaning the surfaces around you, but like there's really some evidence that COVID does not transmit very well from touching surfaces. And there's also some very compelling evidence that it is transmitted through shared airspace and through a lot of time spent in the same airspace with other people. And so as an actor about to go back to set, like I shot one little thing, I'm going back to set actually later this week.
Oh, wow.
For a movie in which another Carmilla cast member is also cast. That's all I'll say about that, but it's gonna be fun. But I'm going back to set, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable about it because I just feel like the average person is more concerned, it seems, about washing their hands and wiping down the table than they are about not staying in the same air as other people and breathing in their like airborne droplets. And I just feel like, sorry?
Speaking nicely. But
yeah. So like I'm just a bit uncomfortable because like as an actor you're unmasked when you're shooting and you're masked in between shots, but like it you know, you got makeup coming into the makeup artist is in your face and the hair person's in your face and the sound person's in your space, and so you just have a lot of like contact with people and you're not masked the whole time and other people aren't masked, and so it just makes me like, I feel like public health in Asia, especially like Japan, did a really good job of like wearing masks right away, saying it's okay to take the train, but when you're on the train, don't speak because that creates more droplets, and wear a mask the whole time. And they basically like stopped COVID with a very dense aging population. And yet America and Canada that have like a much less dense and younger population have not been able to stop it. So I'm like, so that's been like a source of kind of ongoing, I don't know, obsession, frustration for me to just like be reading a lot of information about this and be trying to like share information that's like,
oh yeah, it's overwhelming.
confusing.
I'm like a medical mystery junkie, and I was at some point studying naturopathic medicine in the UK, and so I'm still a part of this medical database. So I'm still like getting these, like they're specifically sent to like physicians, those in healthcare, and of course, so it's going through the myriad, you know, like what was coming out, because then they thought it was surfaces, and then they're like, no, it's not, and then it's, you know, like it's shifting every single day. But it's really, really interesting seeing it happen from a purely healthcare situation. But it makes you concerned, and it makes it upsetting because it seems like a lot of people don't even read a basic, I mean, sometimes you're just like, did you read a basic news article? Or is there just a real aversion to science, like it's a story that you can choose to, it's really tough, especially when you're like, do you not have someone in your personal life? Because it's hard to identify with it. Maybe if it doesn't touch you personally, maybe I can see that, I can understand it, but
it's also not really a great time to be a fact right now, you know, like or a scientific, you know, truth. There's just not a lot of people really buying into that. Well, so like in addition to, you know, a global pandemic, like a new era in a long history of police brutality and systemic racism, I'd say began on May 25th of this year. And I think you guys all obviously know what I'm talking about. And the impact of the video of George Floyd and his murder, it has brought a lot of issues to the fore, chief among them police brutality, systemic racism, specifically anti-Black racism, but also violence against trans and non-gender conforming people, as well as a whole host of other things. you guys have been living through all this. Nicole, how has this really like impacted you, and how have you been responding to this? How are you doing, I guess, is really what I'm asking.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, what a weird time. It's really like, it's very emotionally distressing to sort of see all of these like examples of racism against Black people, like that have always been happening, and then now that everyone's seeing them, everyone's also like sharing them constantly. So it's like this really constant like onslaught of like, I just kind of feel like it's like, you're next, you're next, you're next. Like it's pretty overwhelming. And also then like all these organizations decided that they needed to like adjust their stance on racism. So they all showed up in my inbox, like asking me to join committees. I was like, I feel like a lot
For
of—
free?
Pardon?
For free?
Yeah, totally. Like, oh,
Wow.
Yeah, you would believe how quickly I became people's private advisor. And every one of my Black friends had the same experience, where people were just showing up and like asking them like, define racism. But is it really? But are you sure it was because the person was Black? And can you come and sit on my committee? And is my statement okay? And what do you think about, like, I literally had someone ask me, but doesn't anti-Black racism mean I'm, what did she say? She thought it was like that Black racism was a type of racism, and that she was against Black racism. But she was like, so doesn't that mean I'm against Black people? And I was like, what? It took half an hour to like straighten it out. And then I was like, what's my time? So there's just—
your patience in doing that. It's just, you don't have like, I feel like you have a never ending well of empathy, because it costs so much.
Thanks. It is. Thank you for saying that. It is really costly. Like, it's tiring and exhausting and hyper arousing, and just like, it's a lot. But at the same time, I feel like this is a time in history that will be remembered and analyzed and spoken about. And I feel like things are changing faster than they have in decades. And it's like an important time for people to think something has started to roll, and we can all keep adding pushes to keep it rolling faster.
There's a momentum right now.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I find it heartbreaking that it took an explicit murder on video for that to happen, because nothing's new. Like, I mean, that murder happened like a few years ago, right? Like that, I can't breathe isn't even a new statement. This is like the third time it's come around. So I find that heartbreaking, but at the same time, I'm grateful that it's happening at a time when I'm like, you know, young and healthy and can try to contribute to this time, you know? And I also feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it's such an important time that like everyone can do something. And I feel like it's really important to recognize the ways in which like systemic oppression hurts lots of different people in lots of different ways. And it's easy to think, okay, well, I get oppressed by the system in this way. So like, as a woman, I'm oppressed by the patriarchy, and it's easy to feel like I'm a victim of this part of the system. And then to recognize that there are like, everyone's in the middle of the spectrum, like no one's really at the end. So it's like, okay, well, I get oppressed by the patriarchy, but do I perpetuate racism against other people of other races? Do I perpetuate or allow like homophobia to flourish around me? Do I allow transphobia to flourish around me? And it's like, there's always people who have less privilege than you, that it's like, it's very important to recognize like where you're positioned in all of that. So even for me, like, I recognize that like, I'm speaking out about racism and I have like some like access to platforms, but I'm also light-skinned, I'm also Canadian, English is my first language, I speak English in a particular way, I'm mixed race. So there are like elements in which I'm getting privilege that I didn't earn, right? Like, if I'm someone's favorite Black person, it's not because I'm the best Black person, it might be because they're uncomfortable with people who have dark skin, or they're uncomfortable with people who have an accent, or they're uncomfortable with whatever. So I have to recognize too that like some of the privilege that I have, some privilege in this moment where I'm also oppressed. And I think that's something that's like important for all people of color and all women. And like, there's a lot of identities where you feel like I'm oppressed in this way, or as a queer person, like I'm oppressed in this way, but I can also perpetuate oppression against other people. So you have to sort of see yourself in the middle of a spectrum and do your best to like pull everybody. Like, so I've been really conscious about like, you know, if there's a job I get offered that I can't do, I like try to offer it to somebody else who experiences more marginalization than I do. And I've been like, every job I've turned down, I've given them like a very distinct list of like, here are some people that you could hire instead of me, So I've been, you know, bringing queer people into spaces. I've been bringing like non-mixed race Black people with darker skin than me into spaces. I've been bringing people who like aren't Canadian born into these spaces, and trying to just like, how can I like this little bit of power that I am getting in this weird moment when the lack of power I have systemically is suddenly showing, but I have a little bit of power because I have these particular privileges. Like, how can I like redistribute them? I'm super conscious of that.
Have you noticed that have people taken the suggestions? Have you seen any of your suggestions then come in? Yeah, they've chosen. That's great.
Some have not. A few I feel like I've been penalized for. Like, kind of like, how dare you not think that how dare you suggest that I'm anything other than a bastion of anti-racism? But yeah, I've like recommended people for jobs, and they've gotten the jobs and excelled at them. And I've like worked at like trying to like, there's some inequities in like a school program that I have a small connection to, that I've been like, oh, can I work to sort of like make things better for the students there? And then I'm writing these articles and stuff. And I really feel like this is a moment where like, if you have influence in some way, this is the time, because you're gonna like 40 years from now, you're gonna look back on 2020 and realize that you were smack in the middle of the civil rights movement. And you're going to like, people are gonna ask you, kids are gonna ask you like, what did you do? And you have to have an answer. You can't just be like, yeah, I shared a meme. Like, you have to be actively doing something. And I'm like recognizing, really related to this, that anti-racism is not a feeling. It's not like, I like people of this race, or I like people of this. It's like, I don't give a shit who you like. I care that you use the influence you have to move power and money towards people who have less power and money than you. That's it. Yeah. Like, if you're not physically moving money that you could count, or physically moving power that like is like reflected in like things like job titles, then your actions are just self-improvement. And like, self-improvement's nice, but that's not what we need. We don't look back at 2020 and be like, it was a year of self-improvement that I undertook.
I got abs. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like I had emotional abs by becoming a racist person.
Let's all have emotional abs.
It's got to be like, you know, I have a job. Can I like encourage my workplace to do cultural competency training? Can I encourage my workplace to like do better outreach when they're hiring? Can I change the like comfort level for people that are, you know, that are my business is serving? Like, we have a lot of influence that we don't recognize.
But I think we have to talk about money, because I do feel like a lot of people are trying to move on the feeling and the encouragement of others. I do believe that's starting to open up. But fundamentally, when we like really get down to will things change, I feel like it always comes down to the people in power, like we're talking about. And those foundations, it's like, it's so difficult to change what's you know, you can kind of move blocks off the top of the Jenga pile, you know, but you're not actually probably fundamentally changing that much unless you're able to control the Jenga pieces of power, you know, and those are not going to change overnight. Boards of directors, people who run, you know, like our major film funding industries, all of these things in these massive corporations. And then like, what was so upsetting about like, you're like, oh, you were, you know, hearing about, you know, Rachel Brooks at Wendy's, and being like, knowing that Wendy's supports the sort of prison, you know, money-making complex. And you're like, you have populaces that like, you're like, they're actively hurting you. But a lot of these are also putting money into, like, they're supporting a system that is actually actively hurting you in real life. But like, for some reason, I feel like sometimes we completely separate it when we go like buy groceries, or we buy something off Amazon.
You go to Home Depot and they're pumping money at Trump.
Exactly. So it's like, we have to do the talking and we have to do the actions, but if it is not supported by money, I mean, I think we all understand now how much money makes things go round, and how money makes things go round in our business. And I think it's like really being able to lock the consciousness to that as well, because that will change. People are accountable, because all of a sudden it's risky if they make those decisions. You know, like inclusivity in film and television, when it's beneficial, shown by money and markets, then you'll see great change, and you'll see it much faster.
Totally. And you don't have to have a ton of money or a ton of power to be able to help move money and power. You can do a lot of stuff on Twitter. You can write to a politician. There's actions you can take, but I just feel like if an action only happens in your own heart, it's nice, but it's not really changing anything. If an action happens in your small social circle of like relatively like-minded friends, or like relatives who have some like crappy views, it's nice, but there's a whole system in place. If your action happens in a public arena, like on Twitter, if your action involves like a letter to a politician, if your action involves being at a protest, to me, those are the actions that are actually really pushing the boulder. So I feel like we need to take our feelings into the public sphere and make actions that you could measure. So I'm like, I've been really thinking about that lately, because I think even for myself, like for a while, my own commitment to anti-oppression was in my heart. It wasn't in my actions. And I don't want that anymore. I want to be able to look back at 2020 and be proud of what I did.
Yeah. And beyond. Yeah. I mean, you guys bring up like, I think something in our industry that I think is really, really important. There's been sort of moving on this even before this year, but it's really becoming more urgent, I think. And that's the issue of representation in the media, seeing people in roles and stuff like that are, like lead roles, seeing people, BIPOC performers just playing lead roles that just because they're the lead, not because they need to be, not because it's a part of their character that they must be, but just like we're seeing some of that kind of stuff. We're seeing a lot more of that. Sorry, I'm losing my thread. But what I wanted to bring up was that issue of representation in the media. I mean, I watched, I don't know if you guys have seen that doc Disclosure that was really about trans representation in media and stuff like that. I thought that was a really powerful documentary about the power of representation. And I think and
not tokenism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think
which is damaging.
Which is damaging, or where characters are being represented, but for a laugh, and they're at the butt of a joke or something like that. Or stereotypical. Sorry, say again.
For trauma porn too, where it's like everything about a person from a like equity-seeking group is about them like coming out or getting racisted at, or like, people just being shitty to them. And I feel like it's important to just tell like fun stories. Like, is there, we just have like, that was honestly when I read the Carmilla script the first time, was really something that jumped out at me. Like it wasn't presented to me as a queer show when the script showed up in my mailbox. So I just started reading it and I'm like, is there like a love triangle happening here? Like, I feel like, and I'm watching it and I'm like, wait, those two like each other. Like, wait, I know what's happening here, but it was never presented to me as such when I was like, seeing it as an actor. And I was so overjoyed to read something that was just, and to watch something that was like, just where like queer love was just presented as love, right? Like and I don't entirely believe love is love, because I think if you take the queerness out of love, you're kind of giving queerness short shrift. Like some of the things that are great about queerness are like its ability to re-envision love and re-envision politic and re-envision gender and re-envision power. So if you just make it like love is love and we all aspire to a suburban house with just two moms instead of a mom and a dad, to me that's not quite the point. Like I like aspire to a world where you can just be who you are and you can fully be that. You don't have to fit into like some past cookie cutter of like what a family looks like or what a relationship looks like. That your gender can be whatever it is, that your sexuality can be whatever it is, that your like relationship to sex can be whatever it is. Like I want a world where like sex workers are safe and where what they do is legal and safe for them. And I want a world where people who like don't ever want to have sex can have that and not have that be weird. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's important to me that like stories about equity seeking groups just be like real stories, not like sermons, and not like, I don't know, porn about the most traumatic parts of that identity. Like, I feel like we get to see stories about like dudes just hanging out. They're not always like drunk driving or something, like there's stories about women just like hanging out, but it's not always about them like having bulimia. Like, I just would love to have stories about other groups where it's not always about like racism or like bashing or something. And whenever those representations come out, I'm always so excited to see like, oh, you can just be a person. You don't have to be the victim.
But that's the problem of tokenization, right? Because it's like, it's like somebody put it to me once, it's like having the diversity without the inclusivity. And it's actually more damaging because what you're doing is you're further pushing people into this idea, which is othering them and also showing again that they are not a part of the mainline story. And I mean, you have people you have BIPOC, anyone who is part of a marginalized group who identified as some kind of outsider has grown up having to put themselves and empathize and continually putting themselves in, knowing they were not a part of the main story, knowing they were almost not the lead of their own life, because media has continuously, you know, and media is everything. I mean, it's not just the TV you watch, it's on your phone, it's in a newspaper, it's on a magazine, it's in the doctor's office, you know, everything, bus ads, you know, like it's all the time. And people have pushed themselves to the outside of their own lives because of that. So it's like, we need to be more responsible in this business to be better teachers. You know, I think about that with history stuff all the time. We do a really bad job whenever it comes to something like a period piece, which is why I thought actually Carmilla was friggin' amazing that way, because it's like, we have this vision that any of these outsiders were also not a part. Like, how many period pieces do you see where that's incorporated, where not everybody is white, and you know that way, you know, like it's a bad story. It's bad storytelling. These are ancient civilizations. So why is it anathema? Like, why is it so weird that people existed, and they're, unless it's like a story, and like, you know, like Downton Abbey's storyline of like the black jazz singer, and I was like, well, that's okay, I'm uncomfortable, I don't know. But it's like, it's a real problem in period pieces. And what happens is, then I feel like then it teaches people, and then they go, but you guys weren't around then, and you're like, okay.
Not just in period pieces, but in history, and the telling of history, and who tells history, and whose voices are included. I mean, like if you think you know history because you've read every history book in the whole history of the world, you're missing out on so many perspectives, on every marginalized perspective that you can possibly imagine. There's very few female voices in history. There's very few like marginalized voices, non-European voices in a lot of the modern kind of history that we're taught in North America.
Yeah. And sometimes with like, somebody was talking about like suffrage, you know, like with a lot of suffragettes in Canada, and they were like, that they forget that also, you know, you champion, you're like, okay, they're championing the vote for women and independence. And they go, there was also a lot of racism going on. So dampers.
That's clear. White women got the vote, then not everybody else. It's such a like complicated situation. And like, I'm starting a business with a friend where we're going to sell, we're going to curate subscription boxes for families that teach parents how to talk to their children about equity issues. So one month there might be a box that's about like same-sex parents. So we'll have like all the media in the box, like there'll be like books and toys and activities that like show same-sex parent families in a like positive, friendly light, not in like a super teachy like inundated with like didacticism kind of light, but just like a inclusive, approachable. And so in thinking about that, I've just been thinking, the reason that we're doing it is because I was like, you know, like it's really hard to change an adult's opinion. And I think it's always worth it to try. And I get into lots and lots of conversations on the internet where I just can't go fast, because it's just my moral code is I have to say something every time. I do not let racism, I do not let transphobia, homophobia, ableism, like if I see it, I say something. So I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be nice to talk to people who like don't have super calcified ideas about this? Like, that's children. And I've worked with kids a lot. I've like thought, like, you know, I have a lot of like, I have some education background. I have friends who do too. So I've just been thinking about like, how would you talk to children like this? And I was a child who was educated about race and gender and sexuality in the way that traditionally people have been taught that stuff. And I remember how I felt getting those lessons. And I remember like how they didn't feel good to me. Like the way that my school talked about race felt really terrible to me. So I was just like, I think I could probably come up with a way of doing this better. So my friend and I are launching this business, and I've been thinking a lot about how do you have these conversations? How would you raise a person to be inclusive and to see people in an inclusive way? And so I've just been like steeped in these ideas of equity lately. And it's like, I've been trying to think to myself, I feel like pretty good about how I've done a lot of research into understanding race. So I feel like my understanding of race is like decent. Certainly I have room to improve, and like certainly I make mistakes, but like for the most part, like I know where to go to find those resources. I feel confident when I speak about it. I feel confident that if I make a mistake, I can talk about it and fix it and, you know, like repair it. And I was trying to think about like, what are situations where I've made mistakes around equity, and how did I feel? And like, it's such an interesting thing to like really look back, like, okay, what's a time that I did something that like was oppressive and shitty to somebody else? How did it feel? How did my body feel? How did I respond? What did my response, what might my response felt like to the other person? How could I
Did you notice that you did it?
At the moment, like, were you able to catch it? It's
Sometimes,
only yeah.
Sometimes I know. Like, there's been a few times where like I was thinking, one example was like I was hosting an event. This was like before land acknowledgements were really common, but they were being done, but they weren't everywhere. Some like progressive organizations were doing like indigenous land, like we're on indigenous land belonging to like these groups.
Yeah, the Mississaugas of the credit.
Exactly. Yeah. Some organizations did that, but not every organization did. So I was asked to host an event for an organization that did not do them. And I thought it was important to do them, and I was doing them at all the things I was hosting. And then there was one situation where I felt really uncomfortable with the people that were going to be present, and I thought that they would think it was weird and they wouldn't like it. And like I wasn't mandated to do it, like I was doing it of my own accord. And in that particular session, I didn't do it, and that action of like not doing it was out of alignment with my own values. Like my values are that you know, are like Canada has treated Indigenous people horribly and continues to do so to this day. Like that needs to be talked about, and that people need to confront that and deal with that, and like keep that has to be a present thing. And so in that moment, like I had a choice, and I wasn't violating the legal rules. I wasn't violating the like even the custom. It wasn't standard to do them, but I believed it was right to do them at that point, and I chose not to because I was uncomfortable. And I didn't feel good about it. And as I started the thing, my voice was shaking a bit, and I was kind of nervous and uncomfortable because I knew I was going to skip it. And it was years ago, but I was thinking about it tonight, and I was like, okay, if that happened again, if I felt that kind of discomfort, what would I do differently? What would I remind myself about my own values to make sure that I behaved in alignment with them? Is there a way that I can like personally make a reparation that feels, you know what I mean? Like I might make a donation to something just to kind of like remind myself that this is where my values lie and that I can continue to do better. And interestingly, later on in the event, I did a land acknowledgement because I felt so shitty after not doing that one. The next session I did one for sure, even though that was another, maybe the people that were there they were all American, so I didn't think they would get it. But I did the land acknowledgement, and the person in the room that I thought was most likely to think it was weird and like kind of not like it came up to me after and was like, I've never heard anyone like talk about that before. That was really interesting what you said at the beginning. I really liked that. Like, I never thought of that. Like, thank you. And I was like, yeah, right? Like you can't predict how other people are going to react, and you can't control other people's reactions. Like, even if she hadn't liked it, I did what I think is the right thing. And so it's not my job to make other people act a certain way or receive something a certain way. It's my job to act like Nicole Stamp. And if Nicole Stamp decides like, this is what I think is the right thing to do, if my values say we have to keep on talking about Indigenous issues and like working towards repairing Indigenous issues, then we have to talk about it, and I have to that's the right thing, and I have to do it. So it was like,
it's interesting to hear you say that, like, my job is to be Nicole Stamp, because so much of your job when you're being an actor is to not be Nicole Stamp, but to be somebody else. And so I wonder, like you guys probably both run into this, where you get cast in a role and you're playing a role and you don't feel maybe aligned with the representation within that role, but you're also sitting there going like, I need to, I make it that now.
How do you do it?
Was there a time that shifted for you, Grace? Like, was there a time before where you kind of maybe didn't feel like you could speak up, but then now?
Oh, I still have many moments where I feel I can't speak up, because also I think because it's not the norm of me just showing up and being any particular character, that even when I disagree with something, it's like I have to uphold. I'm this one person, but I stand for so many things, so that somebody can leave if they don't have a great interaction with me, or if I'm stubborn about something and put my foot down, they'll be like, so difficult, you know, and then it kind of ripples. It can be attached to then people who are like me, whatever that means to whoever it is. So it's tricky, you know, and it's, I feel like I've learned sort of some hard lessons that way, but, no, I have said no to some things now where it's like, okay, are they looking for an accent? Because I feel like that to a certain extent tells me something about a part. And when it's been written in a certain way and it has an accent, I go, okay, I see what this is, and I'm not going to participate. But if it's not that, I make sure I don't play it that way. I feel like Wendy Crewson did it really well. She was like, if they're written as like an accessory, I don't play them that way. I play them with this whole thing, and people see it and you don't let them be that thing. You don't let them, even if they wrote it that way, you do not do it. I've done it also where if I want to and it doesn't fit for me, I change a name. I think it's really great when you don't give me something that you might, at first identify as like some sort of Asian name. But sometimes I also feel like it's important, like, because we're not pretending this person's just whoever, you know what I mean? So that, yeah, making choices about things like that. So for me, I always need to be able to stand behind it, because I can't have that feeling. I won't have that feeling. It's not okay with me. And it's not okay for me to put that out there, because that perpetuates some really bad shit. And we've already put up with that, and we're not going to do it anymore. So let's only get better. And I think that when people see that, they, I think they like it, I think when Wendy Cruson goes in there and is like, well, I'm not going to play this person like an accessory, then they're like, oh, this is interesting. What's going on here? Put that stuff in there. You should never do anything that you are uncomfortable with, and I always think somebody was like, never make a character dumber than you are. And I don't know why that has to be said, but I've had to repeat that to me many times when I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing that? Like, I don't know what it's tied to, but it's like, never make them less intelligent than you are.
Can you talk more about that? That's like blowing my mind. So what if,
if
there's a character who's doing something that like,
yeah, I think at first it was like, why am I playing that? It's like some idea of them being, I don't know, meeker. And it's like, they can still make the same decision. And they don't need to have they don't need to have made the best decisions, and maybe they're not so aware in the moment, but it was just something that flipped in my brain, that it's like, why am I giving them less than they deserve in a way? Like, why wouldn't I give them the honor of, like, maybe they make a choice that, in the scheme of things doesn't seem the best for them, but that it was something considered, that I was giving them credit for at least having made different choices or being affected by different things, instead of just being like, oh, well, they just don't get it and I'll just play them that way. And it's like, that doesn't, I feel like, do honor to that person. And it's not a fair representation, because like I've made plenty of choices that, that I go back and I'd be like, oh, it wasn't the best, or I could have done that a little bit better. But there was something in that really clicked for me. I'm like, I'm treating them different. I'm judging them almost, in a way. I'm judging them, and that's not an honest way to portray someone. So that's always stuck with me.
For me, I respect that a lot. I'm gonna think about that more. For me, like, there was a time a number of years ago when I took a part because I felt like, oh, I should take a part. Like, I shouldn't say no to a part ever. And I was about to go into, like, I'd said yes to it, and then I was telling somebody, oh, I just said yes to this thing, and they were like, oh, what is it? And then when I started to tell them what it was, I felt very embarrassed, and I was like, I don't want to tell them what this part is, and I don't want to do this part. I don't want them to come see this show, because I feel like I'm going to be embarrassed, and they're going to look at me in a different way afterwards. And then I was like, well, if that's how you feel, then perhaps your body doesn't belong on that stage saying those words. So I backed out of that project, like a day after accepting it. And then I kind of realized, like, I sat down and I was like, what are the things that would make me embarrassed? Like, if 15-year-old Nicole, like, with stars in her eyes, dreaming of being an actor, like, taking every class she could get her hands on, saw, like, grown-up Nicole doing these parts, like, what are the parts that 15-year-old Nicole would be like, oh, you did all for this? All that work for this? This is the story you wanted to tell? And I kind of made a list for me, like, there are some, like, clues in the script or in the breakdown that I'll recognize, like, this is one of those parts, don't say yes to this one. Or, like, I turned down a part a while ago that was like a comedy scene about abortion, and I felt like I don't want to make jokes about abortion. Like, I know some people who have had some, like, really difficult experiences around abortion, and I don't want to make light of that trauma, even if the sketch were super funny or were super topical. Like, it just wasn't, it's such an important issue for so many people that I didn't feel comfortable making light of it. Hi, welcome back. So I turned it down, and I felt good when I turned it down. Like, I was like, oh, I'm saying no to work, I feel bad. But like, I mean, it's like, Nicole doesn't make jokes about abortion, so why would Nicole step into a role where the role is a joke about abortion? Do you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't feel aligned with my personal beliefs. And then there's situations where it's a little bit off, and then I'll just, like, say something and, like, delicately, clearly but gently without any kind of like finger pointing, because I know people are doing their best, but I'm not gonna, I want to do the best thing that I can do as well. So I'll like have conversations, like even Spencer with you, like there were several times during Carmilla where I would approach you or would approach Steph and just be like, I'm concerned about like this action being related to a stereotype. Is there a way that we can expand it a little bit? Or even like, you know, when I joined the cast of Carmilla, like in season 1, Mel was kind of like,
season 2.
Thank you, season 2. I was there in season 1. I was on that set. I was in the closet the whole time. No,
Me too. Always.
When I joined the cast, so in the first season, like Mel does some things that are kind of violent. She's like kind of grouchy. She's not very friendly. She's not very warm. She's not very vulnerable. And that in some ways can play into stereotypes about Black women. And I didn't feel like I was really playing stereotypes of a Black woman, even though some of those things aligned with stereotypes. But I thought, wouldn't it be even better if the character were to like, you know, expand more? And I had a number of conversations like over the years with Steph and Mel talking about like, just like ideas that I had for ways that Mel could be an even fuller representation of like, you know, a political Black woman. And like a lot of those ideas happened. So even the fact that like we had this like love story came out of conversations that I had with Mel Windle and Steph Lackneen, where I was just like,
really?
Yeah, like what would it be like if Mel had a love story? What would it
If
be
Mel
like?
was allowed to have love.
Yeah. And you could see a softer side of her, and you could see like a gentle side of her and a protective side of her. And like we talked about it a few times. And I also like early on, there was no canon about what Mel's sexuality was. So I like talked to Steph and Melanie, and I was like, what do you think her sexuality is? And we like talked about it together and came up with something. And so I feel like I was able to like have some of Nicole's politics come through with Mel, and that like it's a credit to the Carmilla team that like Steph and Mel and you, Spencer, were all like open to hearing, you know, the like input from an actor. Like I felt very comfortable approaching all three of you and saying like, what about this? What about this? Even to the point of like changing lines when we got to set sometimes, or there were a few little scenes that kind of changed direction a little bit. And I only like working on shows when they're collaborative in that way. Like I'm not really interested in being a meat puppet. Like I'll do it sometimes. Like it
always makes it better too, because it's from a different experience, and that's what you're there for. You come with those experiences, and it makes it richer.
Totally. And like on a show like The Handmaid's Tale, where I have like a little part I go in for a day, I'm not there to like, I'm not going to be like, hey, did you ever think that maybe Alfred could, like I'm not, there's some situations where that's not appropriate.
Maybe there should be a spin-off here. Yeah.
No, but I mean, when there's situations like, especially when the show has a political bent, I feel like if you're going to make a political show, I expect the people behind the camera to have the politics to recognize that like maybe people on the production's politics could play into it too. So I really felt like Carmilla was one of the earlier shows that I was on where that felt comfortable. And I think it kind of like, I grew up a little bit on that set, recognizing that like, oh, I can like shift this a little bit, or I can say something, or like every time a script ever came to me too, especially if there were any jokes around race in it or anything like that, or any violence in it, I would always get a call or an email from one of the three of you saying, if this scene feels weird, if this joke feels weird, if this relationship feels weird, like we can talk about it. And so I kind of like, I feel like Carmilla taught me to like, that it's okay to bring myself to the work more. And it's funny when I look back at like early Carmilla like events where I had to like talk about the character or talk about race in film or whatever, I can see in my body language how uncomfortable I was. Like I feel like I played it off okay, but like I can
really, I can't imagine a world where you feel uncomfortable talking about it.
Honestly, if you look back at some of the early Carmilla footage, to me, I look very uncomfortable. Like I'm trying to keep it cool. But I mean, we've been on this show like since whatever year it was. Like it's been years, and I feel like I've grown up a lot on this show, and I've like come to sort of like see, frankly, like the level of like disclosure and bravery from Carmilla viewers, like talking about their personal journey and sharing that, and sharing it in a public venue too.
So honest and always revolving and with love. It's a really incredible group.
That really happened to me for like the first time that happened for me was before even the second half of season 1 rolled out, because we shot it in 2 blocks and we aired the first 10 episodes before we even were shooting the rest of season 1. And by the time we came back to the set to shoot the second block, 2-day blocks, crazy, there was already fan art, and there had already been a message from a fan who had been going through a really dark time, let's say, and found Carmilla, and it turned things around for them a little bit, or they turned around a little bit, and were inspired to do so. For me as a filmmaker or a maker of anything, really, like that is the greatest thing you could ever hope for, is that the work that you're doing somehow has a positive impact on people. But Nicole, I just wanted to speak to something that you were talking about, is like, I wanted to work with you, and I wanted to work with you, Grace, because I have such respect for who you guys are as people and how you are as performers and how much of who you are you bring to that. And I mean, I'm sure there are different, you know, for every director, there's a different way of doing things. But for me, it's always been so essential with all of the cast of Carmilla to, and all the cast, frankly, of a lot of the things that I work on. I want the input of the person that's playing the role to really like to bring that person to life. And that's only going to work if the person who is alive, that is doing the words and moving around on the screen is bringing themselves to that. And it felt like such a really special set, because Steph and Mel and everybody involved in the production of Carmilla, all 3 seasons and the feature, were really coming from the same place. Like if anyone playing a role was feeling less comfortable about a thing, like, that's a conversation. We didn't have a lot of time to chat on set, but that's worth stopping for, even when you're trying to get 55 pages done in a day or whatever.
Yeah.
And I will also say of the cast, like, so I came on and like, you know, there was like already the established cast, and like many people in that cast at different points in the process would like text me to check in, would say like, does that scene feel okay? Like, how are you feeling about this? Or if anything, it was ever like, even just like a slight, like if they ever caught a whiff of just like whatever, there would always be like a conversation to check in about it. And I feel like this cast has been really lovely about like taking care of each other and like looking out for each other in those situations. And it's like
special group
in every set too, like the number 1 and number 2 on the show like really set the tone for what that set is like and what kind of conversations you can have and like whether you can be vulnerable. And I feel like it's such a credit to Nat and Elise.
I was just gonna say, let's give them names. Natasha and Elise. Yeah, I know.
Natasha, Megan Manless, and Elise Bauman. And then also Caitlin Alexander, also Sharon, also Matt. They've all at different times like reached out to me to be like, you know, welcome aboard. How's this going? Like, Aaron too. Like, I just feel like I was so like welcomed in and felt so comfortable bringing myself to the show. And I felt so like, it just felt very like loving and very respectful, which I really appreciated.
So one of the things I want to start kind of wheeling this around to some of the questions that I have, because there's a few kind of stops along this journey that I would like to make. But
take us on the cheese wheel.
Well, we're at the part of the cheese wheel where I want you guys to talk a little bit about your first impressions of joining Carmilla. I mean, we're already kind of talking about it. So if you can take us to the moment, though, Nicole, since you're talking right now, if you could take us to the moment where you first got the script, you first learned about it. What were some of your first impressions? What were some of the what made you want to work on the show?
Well, I mean, I've told the story before at Carmilla events, but like I knew you, and like when I got the script, it was like, oh, here's this web series. It's like kind of small, and I was like, I don't know, like I'd never done a web series before. And then I was like directed by Spencer. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Like I wanted to work with you, and like we were friends, and like I was excited to. And then when I got the script and I was watching season 1 to try to figure out what the heck was going on, and I'm like figuring out like this is a queer web series that is not one of those like trauma porn queer web series. I was so into that. And meeting the fandom was amazing. And like, I don't know, I feel like finding out there was a movie it's just like, it just kept ramping up. Like, oh, another season? Oh, a podcast? Like, I feel like there were so many, like, it just felt like a ladder of awesome. Like, it just kept getting better and better. And then also like when you know, I'd been sort of subtly being like, oh, I mean, that's a Mel love story. And then when I found out that she was going to, and I was like, so who's the love story gonna be with? And then like, so Grace and I, like, I don't even remember when.
Enter Grace.
I was just thinking about this the other day. I was like, did we meet at a radio audition? Like was there like a radio cast? For some reason, I have that in my head.
I can't believe you guys didn't know, like if you guys didn't know each other before, I can't believe that.
We did, okay. But where did we meet? I was thinking about that just the other day.
I was thinking about that today too. I do not remember where we met. I've known who you were for a really long time because I'd seen Insecurity, which is like a Canadian show that Grace was like a series regular on. So I thought you were great from that. I knew exactly who you were. I think I'd even like watched a bunch of footage of you because I was on a jury and some stuff of yours got submitted. And I remember, I think it was like in that SARS series.
Oh, the movie about SARS?
Yeah. I watched your scenes in that because you were
That's
submitted for something I was on a jury for, and I was like, oh, she's good. I like her. And then we met somewhere in person, and we went for lunch. Remember, we went for lunch beside Trinity Bellwoods Park.
I was just thinking about that literally the other day and having that convo.
Yeah, I was there, guys. I was there too. I was in a closet.
Is that when you were doing the puppet musical?
I was your server.
Yep. And you know what struck me is, like, first of all, I really liked hanging out with you, and we had this great lunch, and we ate like delicious croissants. It was super fun.
Yeah.
And there was a weird tree beside. Do you remember this? There was a weird tree where we were sitting, where the leaves looked like this. Like, looked like little hands. And I think I was at a point in my life, this was a number of years ago, where I was trying to like play it cool about what a nerd I am. So I was like, what is that tree? But I didn't want to be all like,
yeah. You don't want to reveal it.
We're like, oh, what's that tree? What a weird tree. And then I went home, and like, then you looked up what tree it was, and you texted me like the genus and species and some illustrations of the tree. And I was like, oh, I love this so much.
Nerds of the world unite.
Yeah. I feel like I'm such a fan of like your brain in person, and like have been for and continue to be, because you continue to keep rolling that ball. And I feel like those are the things I admire most about people.
So I was going to ask a question about like where your guys' chemistry came from, but I'll just scratch that off right now.
I was so happy when it was you. Like, I was like, oh God, of all the people, like, there could be there's so many people out there where you're just like,
yeah.
Well, Grace, how did you, like, for you, what was your sort of experience of coming on board of the Carmilla movie? Like, how did that happen for you?
Like, well, I mean, I feel like, again, it was like, I knew.
Was I there?
I mean, you were there for the audition, but I don't remember. Did you message me, or did I just get I feel like you must have messaged me.
I for sure must have messaged you. I think
Yeah.
I was like, I've been like searching for some way that I could work with you. So I think the moment that I got a sniff, I put it out there. And I think Steph was already
You peed on it. Yeah.
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 I was just like, here she is. I peed on her already.
So yeah, bring her in. But I was so stoked because it's like, to me, so one of my dream projects has always been like a period piece, like an era piece that centers, that's through like.
Not to be confused with.
This was both kinds of period pieces.
But, like, why can't it be a period piece about periods? I mean, why not? But through the protagonist is BIPOC, because I think that's really important on many levels. And I'm a big junkie for period films, like, because they're also like, they're a bit like alternate enough that we're not so defensive about some of the things that we do. So they're able to like teach and inspire and just be fun as well, like about a different time. So like when it's like, you're like, oh, I'm going to be Charlotte Bronte. You're like, well, this is going to be badass. Like, this is great, and I knew you. And I think that's when you know people who are working on it and you have a great respect for them as a person, you'll be safe.
Yeah, totally.
And the rest, you're just like, I'm going to jump in the boat and we're going to see where the boat goes. And then, I mean, I remember when we were shooting, maybe it was the first day, and somebody, I think they sent us donuts or something on set, like donuts got delivered. And I was like, what have I stepped into? This is amazing. I have never been on something where people just send us donuts.
I think those donuts came from fans. I think they were actually sent. Yeah, they were sent to like the Smoke Bomb head offices, because that was the address that they had. And Steph brought them to set. Like, honestly, awesome.
Like I'd never been a part of it. And I was like, what is this? And then as it keeps going, like, it's really tough to be online, I feel like, in the world today. But the Cream Puffs have been such a beautiful, beautiful group of human beings that I feel like are always coming at us with love, always being really excited in a very positive way, being very open to conversations from everything that I've seen. Mm-hmm. And that excites me, because that, I think, is important in the world. I think the reason that we do work is so that if you can make a person feel less alone in the world, that's your job done. Amazing. If you can then spawn a whole community that is like rooted in love, first and foremost, even better. That's actually improving the state of the world. So rock on. Donuts for all. Yeah.
So I want to wheel you guys around to your characters a little bit. So Mel, like, well, actually, let's start with you, Grace, because we're already talking about Charlotte Bronte. Like, what was your way into Charlotte? What was it when you first came in, and forget about like why you joined the team, but focus on your role and what you do as an actor. How did you get into Charlotte as a character, and tell us a little bit about that process?
Sure. For me, well, there was dialect stuff, which I reached out to some pals that I had in the UK, because I didn't want it to be super, super polished, but I wanted it to be rooted in somebody's like real cadence, so I could do the rest of the acting stuff on top of that. So yeah, I had a pal help me out and do some lines while they were on holiday. And then it really, I think the crux of it is like, you got to look for the heart of it. So what's the heart of this person? And the heart of it for me was like in the scenes that I had, because, you know, I think I only had 2 or 1 maybe, was the love for Emily, for Cara G. And that, and the guilt that you feel, I think guilt is a pretty major, it's a pretty big motivator, and it's a big motivator for people's lives. So if you had something that you feel, that really hit you, like you weren't there for somebody important in your life when they passed away, you carry that for the rest of your life. And so having this guilt surrounding someone that you love so much, and that they're living in every day, and that you'll never be able to fix it. You can't fix it. You've spent your whole life trying to fix it. That I very deeply identify with. So feeling that about Emily, and knowing that you can never fix it, and you have that, but you're always trying to be a good big sister and making sure you're doing everything for her, that I feel like tells you everything you know about Charlotte. So there's a darkness and a sadness, but also I always have to be up for this person, you know, like it's, I guess the stuff that you know, maybe would hide from your kids or something, or people that are important to you, you know, like always trying to have a face, but eventually they'll catch you and they'll be like, are you okay? What's wrong? You know, and be like, no, it's fine. You know, like that whole relationship was really, I got it in my heart. It made sense. So that I felt like was the major driver, because the guilt part doesn't get any bigger than you being at fault for, you know, your sister's death, basically. So, yeah.
Nicole, can you tell, like shed a little bit of light on kind of not just what got you into Mel in the first place, or what attracted you so much to the role, but also how Mel has evolved? Like you spoke a little bit about that in terms of like Mel getting, you know, pushing for Mel to have a little bit of to have a romantic angle or something like that. Tell us a little bit about how that kind of progressed from season 2 to season 3 into the feature.
Well, so when I auditioned, at the time of my audition, I think I had watched I had time to watch about a third of season 1. And then I had skipped through, so I didn't want, you know, I watched like a few all the way through. So I had a sense of the arc of the season. And then I had read my audition was the Adonis Hunt scene, mm-hmm. and I didn't have any other context. So one of Mel's lines is, how many of us have they hurt and humiliated? Dozens, hundreds. And in my head, so I didn't know anything about what that meant, but in my head I was like, okay, well, she's like this, what do you call, like angel of vengeance coming mm-hmm. down to like pay retribution for sexual assault. So that's cool. Like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. And so I think I had in my head, like that for Mel spun out of, it's not just the Zetas and the Summers. It's not just, you know, the 30 guys in that frat and the 30 women in my sorority. It's like the like generations of women that have experienced like violence at the hands of men. Mm. And so that's a character, like I like righteous anger is a real thrill. Yeah. I know what that feels like.
Tasty.
Yeah, so that was my sort of like way into her. And then it was fun to do season 0 and like explore like this revelation in the script that she had been like a complete mouse when she was younger, and sort of like had to be like almost nudged by another person to find her power and recognize her birthright, which was that she comes from this line of powerful women and like she's meant to be a leader. And then then there was the season in the pit where I was like, that was a tough season because I didn't really get to like act with anybody else. Like I was with Matt, but like beyond that, like I didn't really get to talk to any of the rest of the cast. Like it was all over like video chat. So those were like kind of like, it felt a bit like I felt lonely. Like I felt like I was in the pit. Ditto with the podcast, because that was like this alone. But I liked that you got to see sort of like her internal monologue. And in the podcast, she had her first little love affair where like it was like a little love story with Mel C.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Elsie with Paige. And then in the movie, I felt like it was interesting to see that like it felt like in the series, Mel was like chafing from being at Silas. Like she was like ready to like get out and ready to get out from under the shadow of Danny, out from under the shadow of like Carmilla and Laura's drama. Like she was just ready to like be almost like be on her own. Like she was kind of trying to push through something. So the idea that like a few years later, when she's had a chance to go out and have her own career, her career became to be like the director producer for the show that Laura's doing. I was like, oh, I like that though, because like as Mel, I've always like respected Laura. Like I find that her like my way of playing with Elise is like, I don't necessarily agree with her tactics. I find them too soft, but I respect her like her conviction, and I respect her strength, and I really respect her loyalty.
Yeah.
And I respect her bravery. And so, and also like I think Mel sort of looks at her as like a person who lives with her heart on her sleeve more. Like Laura is a much more like emotionally expressive person than Mel is, and I feel like Mel like has something to learn from that and maybe gains from that energy being around her. So I really liked it, the like implied story that like Mel realized that like this was a friendship that really mattered to her and like chose to maintain the friendship. And that also that like Kirsch is the camera operator for Laura's news channel. Like it was just like we like the loyalty of Silas, like the three of us like stuck together and had this career. So we like this friendship like stayed. And I thought there were some really nice sweet moments where you could still see the like eye rolling of like, you know, the reasons.
Kirsch is still Kirsch and like, yeah.
Love an awkward forced friendship.
But then at the same time, like at the end of the story when like Charlotte's gone and Mel is sad, like Laura's the one that comforts her, and that Mel has this little moment of vulnerability and this little moment of friendship with, and you see like they really do like care for each other as friends. And I thought that was so beautiful, because for me like long time friendships are of such value to me. Like I've been friends with my best friend for like, you know, more than half my life, and I like really value the like longevity of that relationship. And so the idea that like Mel would also choose to stay close friends with her college buds who she'd been through all this stuff with, I really liked. So to me, like, yeah, like Mel is moved by like righteousness, principle, loyalty, and like action. Like those are her drives. And so to get into the character, like I like had strong backstories for how I felt about each of the other characters. And like Mel's honest too, so she's not afraid to tell you if what you're doing is stupid or she's annoyed by you. But she does it with love, which is like I can relate to that. Like I feel like
I was just gonna say that like no acting required, Nicole.
Like it's funny, you know, I feel like I was realizing like with some of my friendships, like I have some friends where like we have definitely called each other out like really like directly about things that the other person has done that had an impact or whatever, that was not, you know, maybe not what they intended, but was kind of harmful to the person. And I really value a friendship where you can do that and you can move past it and still respect each other and recognize that like like a call out is already a form of love, because the lack of love is to just ghost the relationship, right? Like if I didn't care about someone, I would just stop interacting with them and like
cancel them. Yeah.
But if you can say to someone like, don't do that, or you're, you know, whatever you're doing affected me in this way, like I think that's really powerful. So I feel like that's something that Mel would do, and that's like the relationship that Mel has with all of the characters that she's like brought with her in life from Silas, like that they've been through something and the relationship is really durable. So that's important. And then I wanted Mel always to be, she's an athlete, so I always tried to do physical stuff. Like I would do push-ups or like go for a jog or whatever to try to like feel physically in my body. And I wanted her to feel like, I've said this before, like I feel like she's a bit of a cross between like a panther and a peacock. Like there's like a stealth to her, but also a strut. Kind of like back and forth between those two worlds. So that was kind of like how I pictured, like when I was thinking about
killer fucking peacock. Like, yeah, it should really fuck you up.
Yeah, the wardrobe. Like, what are we gonna wear? Thinking about how I'm gonna move, thinking where I'm gonna stand in the scenes, and how I want my blocking. Like I tried to sort of balance those two energies.
I'm so glad that you guys are sharing so openly about your process and about your way into these characters, because like for me, one of the joys about working with you guys and frankly, like the cast of the show and the movie, a big part of why I want to work with someone who brings so much richness and so much of their person to it is because it can make a character authentic. That might, you know, like any character that's just saying a bunch of words, if you don't do that Wendy Crewson thing where if you don't refuse to let them be an accessory, if if you just allow that to happen, then the work suffers. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel like that's a real person. And you guys bring so much of that to it. You brought so much of that also to the romantic dynamic. I'm wheeling this back to the chemistry question, sort of. But also I want to kind of like push forward into this other question, because like I see how much work you guys put into these roles. And there is a little part of me, especially even sitting here with you guys right now, that's like, oh, I want to see more of those characters. Like I'm sad that they're gone. And so I want you guys to talk a little bit about the chemistry and the dynamic that you guys have, because it was such a joy to sit in the edit suite with Jordan Crude, our editor, and just look at the little moments between you guys. And they were so subtle, and they were so like, they were so true and so human. And Jordan's a very sensitive editor. So we would like find these little moments, be like, oh, we have to cut to this little, I think there's a moment where you kind of like just tuck your chin a little bit when you're looking at Grace, and then Grace kind of just like, she's always flusters a little bit. It's like tiny moments, but we were just like, oh my God, Kid in the Candy Store. We had so many of these little moments to play with you guys. So talk to me a little bit about, that was a really long preamble. Talk to me a little bit about the chemistry between you guys. You don't have to like confess to mad crushes or anything like that, but tell me a little bit about that. But then also talk to me a little bit about like what you imagine a future or a spin-off with Mel and Charlotte would look like. That was a really big question. Oh, and let me throw it to one of you. Grace, why don't you start it off?
Okay, so at the start, I don't know can you talk about chemistry? I've always wondered, I was like, can you talk about chemistry, or you just have it, you don't have it?
I failed it in high school, if that counts.
I was more interested in biology, but like, I mean, I have such a deep respect for Nicole, for, Nicole's brain, the way that Nicole sees the world, like the way that Nicole cares about doing something in the world. Like if you haven't read Nicole's article that I think was on CNN about 18 ways to keep working at racism, like, and I also, when things affect me, I feel like they affect me emotionally a lot. And I have a very hard time not being super, super angry. And I have always, since I was a child, had a problem with anything that felt like an injustice. I really struggled. But I have found that, I mean, there's a lot to be angry about in the world right now, that when I react from that emotional place, because I am so stirred up and I don't know how to be less angry about it, it makes it difficult to make a point that may actually change someone's mind. You can have people agree with you, but if you're going to have a real discourse, you need to have, you need to operate more from the cortex, like you've got to be able to listen to someone and in a way tolerate their beliefs, even if they're completely opposite of what you believe in, the things that you hold true, your values. Because I think those are the only real discussions that make a difference. I'm trying to have the ability, but I do not have that ability to do that. But every time I look over and see Nicole in the corner, I'm like, Nicole's doing that full on 24/7, so eloquent, with a lot of patience, with untold generosity of time, because this stuff, I mean, I've had a lot of days where you're like, all I can do is my body actually needs the couch because I can't hold it up. And you're so distressed about the world, but then you're like, am I doing anything by being angry? And, like anger is really tiring, and feeling depressed about being hopeful about people is tough. But some people and I feel like my anger is unrelenting, but I don't know that it's productive. And I feel like whenever I look at Nicole doing that, I see all the things. I see great information, and I see compassion, and the amount of stuff that you've been asked to do for free, but be able to tolerate that and not, I get offended by that. So I think I would approach that and get really angry, and then, but I don't think that that's helpful going forward. So, but I think that that's cost, even though like we're different people, but like you're able to do that and you still have a brightness, you have a light, you know what I mean? It doesn't seem outwardly to always drag you down, and you're able to do it the next day, and that's something I like deeply am attracted to in people. You know what I mean? Like that, I think, is what's the most inspiring thing about giving me hope for the future. So it's like having that, I don't know. I don't have to think about it too much about like playing a scene between the two of us. And I know that there's a mind at work, and, you know, like, and I like that they're both, I think, especially as BIPOC, you understand what it's like to be tokenized on the side and you don't have a love story. I've had plenty of ones where I was this person and didn't have a richer story life. And a lot of times that develops a hardness about you and a defensiveness of comedy or whatever it is. And so like you're kind of meeting these two characters who have had that in their own worlds, you know, how many hundreds of years apart, finding each other and always kind of being people maybe who shielded their heart. And then you meet someone else who's kind of just like that, but also like really on it and you can joke with, and, you know, and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep an eye on this. I'm not going to give anything away, but I'm going to keep an eye on it. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing, that you've kind of almost found your friend, like your best friend, right? And I think that friendship always gets the short pant leg, if that's a saying, in this, because like, I think
we're not wearing pants. We're not
that's
wearing
right.
pants.
That's right. So yeah. But like, where are all the love stories about friendships? You know what I mean? That's a bit like, you talk about, my friends have been there through any kind of relationship. And I don't know why relationships get elevated above friendships, but I believe they're on the same level. And I think there's something, what's that?
Well,
Yes.
I was just throwing out there that Thelma and Louise was one of my favorite films about friendship. That's it. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, friendship is
and shit.
so pure, you know, and I think that that's it. Like you found your best friend that you just love spending time with, and then you got to go back to your thousands of worlds away, you know? So yeah.
I feel like for me, like finding chemistry with Grace, like, I mean, like I liked you before I met you. I thought you were a fantastic actor. I thought you were really funny. I could tell by your acting, like before I even met you, watching you in these scenes, I was like, this person's really smart. And I saw like a lot of versatility too. Like your character in the Stars movie was very different than your character on Insecurity. And like, I feel like you have such a breadth of depth inside of you. So I was very like interested in you as soon as I knew who you were. And then going for lunch with you, like, you're so funny, you're so smart, you're kind. I think you are very, you have a real like ambition about you that doesn't require like stabbing other people in the back, which is not common. Sometimes in our industry, like those.
So sad.
But don't
Yeah, I know.
sometimes ambition comes with like some like meanness, and I didn't see that in you at all.
Some real Lady Macbeth-ness.
Yeah. Even to the point of like, you know, I know some actors who have.
She had reasons. Sorry.
But like, I know some actors who have like little things that they do that they think maybe gives them an advantage that they would never tell another actor about because of the competition. And like, you know, you and I had a talk early on about like how we tape auditions at home, and you gave me like a tip about that, how you do it, that I wouldn't have guessed that was a way that anyone did it, and it's such a good idea. And I was like,
oh really? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, well,
you were like, I sit down for auditions, like I do them sitting. And she's like, it just grounds me and it just puts me into a more filmic place and like helps me blot out all the like living room around me. And I was like, oh, so now I do too for a lot of auditions. But that's the kind of.
What she didn't tell you though was she's sitting on the toilet.
Yeah,
she didn't tell you
without pants.
she kept that back. She hid that from you.
That really helps you blot things out. Like that's the kind of tip. Like, I mean, occasionally in our lives, there are going to be moments when like we are competing, you and I, for the same role. So the idea that you would tell me something that you did that's really helpful to you as an actor that could be helpful to me too. Like, I literally know a lot of actors who would never give up information like that could, you know what I mean, give somebody else like a competitive advantage that they personally have. And I was like, it's a small thing that I don't think you even thought of, but I like really noticed it because I know other people who like have explicitly lied to me about things they do in auditions. And then I've like found out that like the way that they approach it is like, they like, if we were talking about it, they lie in a way that makes it look like they just like toss off an audition and like, we don't need to rehearse and we don't need to whatever. And they give me like tips that if I were to follow their stated process, my auditions would get worse. You don't need to worry about lighting. It's just an audition. It's okay if you forget your lines, just keep going. Stuff like that, where you're like, that's almost like sabotage because that's not accurate.
It's such a small idea too of the competition that two actors might be in for a particular role, because I mean, like it's not the kind of competition where undermining your competition puts you like becomes a benefit for you. It isn't, you're not like in a hurdles race where you're tripping somebody, you know, like it's not that kind of thing, because at the end of the day, you know, there are a million different reasons that someone is going to get a role and someone else might not get it. And like, you have a hard enough time as an actor trying to control what you can bring to the table, to waste your time trying to think or play games or gamify fucking up other people is, I mean, that's actually just impeding your own progress. So I think like that's so crazy. I mean, it makes me so sad to hear that that's a thing that you experience.
But I mean, I think that's real, because every so often, I mean, you can, I mean, metaphorically speaking, I mean, you can trip someone and you may win that one, but I just don't think, especially I think coming from BIPOC actors to a certain extent, experience the same things, especially in casting and in this industry. And I think that unless we move as a whole and give ourselves all more space and opportunity, it doesn't get better for any of us. Totally. It really honestly does not. Yeah. You know, like, and that's really shocking, but I think this business is like, it's hard. It calls for people who are very vulnerable, and yet it's so exploitative to that, you know? So it's like, I understand it's built to look competitive, to be pitting people seemingly against each other, but I just don't think that helps us. And it doesn't help you. That's a poison in your veins, I think, when you're doing your work. So, and
it doesn't help the work. It's not like at the end of the day, the thing that you're trying to do is, you know, to create something that might move people, that might, you know, it doesn't benefit that effort to make something beautiful that might move people when you're spending your effort trying to mess up other people. It just doesn't
you
work.
know, like, also, I've also heard stories, I mean, on the other, to, you know, talk about the other side, I've heard about actors who like intentionally sabotage other people. So they do all their own lines, like really big stars, and they like do all their own lines, and then on the other ones they just actively get them wrong, and people cut around them, and you don't, that's crazy, but like you don't see it. And so sometimes
these are microaggressions, and the logical extension of this form of competition is assassination, right? Like that, you know, kill everybody and then you get all the roles. Like, so it's stupid, but those small aggressions are, you know, they point in the direction of that kind of violence. And it's fucking wrong, and it's not cool on, I don't know. I think most sets that, well, if it's my set, it's not cool. And I see that stuff, you know, like that's something, and sometimes you end up working with performers who have been around for a long time. Like we had Enrico Colantoni on in season 3, and he played Laura's dad, and he's a big time actor. He was amazing. He brought a lot of energy. He ran lines with Elise, I would say, like before our shoot days and stuff like that. Like, and that kind of generosity. I mean, you'll see like the best performers aren't chintzy like that. They don't play dirty, you know. I mean, you hear stories about, you know, like actors on big shows. I don't know, like you know, Steve McQueen would when he's opposite Yul Brynner in The Magnificent Seven, right? Yul Brynner was a little shorter, so he'd get a little pile of sand. Steve McQueen would stand across from him when they're doing the close-ups, and he would just slowly sweep the pile of sand away with his foot while he was talking to Yul Brynner, just to fuck with him, you know. Those are the stuff of legend, but those people already got the roles. They're already in it. And then, but I mean, like Grace, you're right. Like sometimes you'll get people who just, they'll bring it on their close up, and they'll just phone it in when they're offering up stuff to the other people. But like, if I'm
really mess you up, I did a film with somebody who like was amazing in her scenes, and then in my scenes, she started like completely changing. She would still say the line, but she changed the delivery of every single line. And the director it was their first time directing, so they didn't really know how to combat that. And when I watched the scene back, I mean, like, it's fine, but like, I can tell we're in 2 different scenes, because I'm not responding to what she gave me during her close-ups, which happened 2 hours ago. I'm responding to what she's doing in my, because she just kept surprising me to the point of like, you know, there was one moment where it was like, while I'm talking to her, she's like, what can I say to kind of anonymize this? Like, let's say, for example, while I'm talking to her, she's drinking a glass of water. This is not exactly what happened, obviously, 'cause it's weird, but like, instead of drinking her water while I'm talking to her in this serious conversation, she started blowing bubbles in the water. But the camera can't.
So like distracting.
Distracting. She literally did it. There's no other reason she could have done it because the camera was not on her. She started adding extra stuff in just to mess with me. And I was like, this is weird. Like, I don't know why you're doing this. I feel like I didn't even really know her. Like it felt so aggressive in such a subtle way. And there was nothing for me to really do. Like, what am I supposed to do? And then I put it into performance and try to respond to takes that she did 30 takes ago. It was very strange. Anyway, so you didn't do that, which is lovely. But like, even beyond that, talking about,
but I'm going to now.
no, but like, you know, that was almost like Nicole's chemistry with Grace, but like Mel's chemistry with Charlotte and like being on set with you, I feel like you're kind of a bit of a mysterious person. Like I feel like I've known you for a while, but I still don't quite know a lot of things about you. Like I think you kind of keep a lot of cards close to your chest, and you also have a lot of like depth and a lot of things that you are good at and a lot of things that you like are interested in. So I kind of feel like the more I get to know you, I just feel like I'm like,
This is not Nicole talking to Grace. This is Mel talking to Charlotte.
Talking to Grace, but it came out as like Mel observing Charlotte too, because like I knew you in these contexts, and then seeing you suddenly show up in a corset and like with an accent and like a completely different like style of being and a completely different like the energy that came off of you as Charlotte was so different than the energy that you put out as Grace. And I remember like some of those looks I gave you on set, like as the character, were literally just Nicole being like, "You're fascinating." Like I wasn't like, it's like, where did that come from? So I mean, it was kind of like both, right? Like I was like, I find you very like interesting as a person, and then on set I was like, like it was very sincere because what I was getting from you was so different than what I'm used to having from you, and we'd never acted before too, so I felt like your like approach to when the camera rolls, like you change a lot when the camera rolls, and I was just really like, what is she doing? This is so interesting. Like it was a kind of double consciousness happening because I was like Mel and Charlotte, but I was also Nicole and Grace being like, there's like so much going on here. Like this is so cool.
That's interesting. Yeah, because actually Elise, who I feel like this show has gifted me with so many amazing people from the cast in my life. And so Elise and I have spent like some time together. And I think Elise mentioned once just like that, because we worked together later on Mary Kills People. And she was saying, you know, one thing that I took from you is that like you would really like kind of like put yourself away when you were getting ready to like do stuff. You would make sure you carved your own space for that. And that's something that I've just learned over time. My mind is very active. I'm hyper aware, and it's really distracting because I'll be focused on the wrong things. So when I'm preparing, I really need to do things to focus myself, just to keep myself calm and just to keep myself rooted in something that matters that I'm going to do later. And that she was like, I really took that to be something I want to try. And I think that sometimes that can be hard too, because it's like, I want to be with the team and I want to be, you know, doing all this stuff, but I also don't always have the capacity to be able to, I'm not the person who can socialize endlessly and still be the same, you know, like how I see what I talk about with Nicole in terms of still have that well of empathy. I get drained, I think, very easily because I'll be worried about so many things. Like my mind's going to get preoccupied with all these things, and then I'm a shell. And then when I'm employed to do work, it's like I have to protect that. And that's my space for taking care of the person that I guess I'm, you know, entrusted to take care of, Charlotte, for this, you know? So it's like, it's tough because sometimes it's like, yeah, then it rolls quickly and you feel like, oh, I didn't get to spend as much like just friend time sometimes, you know? But then I think this has been great because afterwards I feel like I've got this, you know, vault of friends that I'll keep for forever, you know? But yeah, from thinking about it, you know, thinking about it back, being like, you're like the kid at the window and they're like, they're all outside. What are they doing? You know, like, but yeah, like an awesome group of people that I admire and love for different reasons. So it's not difficult to act and pretend that, you know.
Yeah, I feel like I've taken some really nice friendships away. Like I still text with like almost every member of the cast. Like we still, you know, talk, which is not the case for every other project I've ever worked on. Like I really feel like we've like bonded together, and like also like conventions are like going to like events where you like meet the fans. And remember going to the screening, like I feel like there's like a more of a almost like I don't know, man. Like really Scooby Gang kind of vibe to this show. Like I feel like you get to see your friends in like different contexts and like see them around different people and see the effect that the work is having on other people. And like, there's something really special about like this show, clearly in the way that it, like the fans and the show interact is super special. And I think that influences the way the cast interacts too. Like I feel like we're conscious of doing something that's bigger than just a show. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a social movement behind Carmilla that I think we all feel protective about, and we sort of treasure it, and then that comes out in our relationships to each other too, I think.
Mm-hmm. And like that it has encouraged, even I think within our personal lives too, to like because it's such an open and welcoming fandom, I feel like there's a lot of exploration that it's like, I feel very safe to explore my sexuality in whatever way. I'm also engaged in talking about it, you know, like online, and like I'm loving seeing the journeys of others and saying that like, oh, this show has really helped me be open and tap into these parts of myself that I've learned because of this journey. And I think that like, what could be more amazing than that?
Totally. Yeah, and there were some really moving moments that at the convention there were a few people who like asked questions, or like at different events there've been people who have like asked questions or like publicly said something where you can really feel in the person's body language that they are out of their comfort zone and doing something that like is like maybe stressful for them, or like that they wouldn't typically do, and like, you know, disclosing aspects of your personal life, or like facing aspects of your personal life that maybe you've been like taught, you know, in different ways that you shouldn't. I feel like there's so much like courage floating around in the Carmilla air that it would be weird. Like it wouldn't make sense if it didn't also permeate into the relationships that happen behind the screen. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like, like it's a very like vulnerable, like loving kind of environment that I think is like the fans drove that, you know?
Yeah. They're the reason we're here. I mean, like I was saying earlier, like even before season 1 was all out, like that became really palpable on set, and everybody really felt it.
Excessive? Do you remember senior year? You were possessed by Carmilla's mom, the evil god, who forced the entire student body, including me, to dig a pit to the literal gates of hell. Or how about that time that La Fontaine got brain-sucked by the giant anglerfish monster? Or how about that time that the evil baron tried to execute Carmilla? Or that time that Laura sorta kinda, I don't know, died?
We do have a lot of backstory.
So Grace, what I was just saying to Nicole is I kind of want to like get closer to wrapping this up. One of the things that I wanted to do, just because it's fun and because it's a bit of a thing from the CarmillaCon in October, do some rapid fire questions. Okay.
Hey, timer. I just noticed that this is a good sign. Carmilla sign is like right beside me on my desk.
That's awesome. That is a good sign.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw out just a whole bunch of questions, and I'm focusing strictly on like either or questions. Okay.
What does that mean?
Like it's just this or that.
Okay.
And you guys, whatever, bark back quick so that we can go through this quick. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Dog or cat?
Cat.
Oh, dog. Why did I say cat? I love dogs. That's so weird.
Netflix or YouTube?
No.
YouTube.
YouTube.
TikTok or Twitter?
Twitter.
TikTok.
Phone call or text?
Phone call.
Oh, text.
Music or podcast?
Music.
Podcast.
Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
I didn't hear Nicole say anything.
iPhone.
Oh, okay. Cake or pie?
Cake.
Pie.
Kill or be killed?
Ooh, kill.
Plead the fifth.
That's like a duh. Swimming or sunbathing?
Swimming.
What's worse, laundry or dishes?
Dishes.
Dishes.
Burgers or tacos?
Tacos.
I like both very much.
I do too.
I can't.
I'm as you can tell, I'm like pacing through these, so like keep up. Stay on the train.
They do.
Blue or red?
Blue.
Red.
Pen or pencil?
Pencil.
Your money or your life?
What? My
Life.
Well,
I'm an actor.
Okay.
I didn't do this for money.
What money?
I think everybody knows this, but I love this question because there's a right answer to this as far as I'm concerned. Toilet paper, over or under?
Over.
Yeah, right?
People.
Special exception for people who have cats who do the but
Can't
only.
cats do that anyways? Once
do
they
it
get the
anyway.
cats are wily, man.
You do it anyway, as someone who.
Yeah, but if you do it, if it's under, yeah, do it and it just spins and spins and spins.
But they can get, if they get the claw on it and it starts to go, they can just, once it's down, obviously.
We're clearly spending too much time on this question. Cups in the cupboard, right side up or upside down?
Right side up.
Up. Who puts them down? That's gross. That's touching your mouth.
You're touching the part that's going to go in your mouth. I don't like that.
No.
Yeah. Pancakes or waffles?
Waffles.
Waffles.
Meat or veggies?
Meat.
Veggie.
Are you a vegetarian?
I'm Pesco. That's my name. That's my new name.
Pesco Kung.
I gotta ask this just because it's a fun one to ask, but I know the answer. Honesty or others' feelings?
Honesty.
Honesty.
Others' feelings.
I know. What are those? Other people's feelings? Grace.
Wait, what is that? I'm trying to understand what that means.
Would you be honest? You spare the other person.
Would you be honest?
Oh,
to spare,
I see.
yeah.
I see. See, but I think honesty is better for everybody's feelings.
Yeah. Okay. Coffee or tea? What's better for everybody's feelings? Coffee or tea?
I prefer tea, but I drink coffee.
What? Why?
Weird. We're gonna unpack that. Horror or comedy?
Want to control this brain. Pardon me?
Horror or comedy?
Comedy.
Winter or summer?
Summer. Although I'm really hot right now, and
we're all like,
really have an ice pack and putting on parts of my body because I'm so hot.
You got to do it on your neck. Apparently, that's the key. Yeah. Helps cool
Soup
it.
or sandwich?
Soup.
Video game or board game?
Board game.
Oh, board game.
Beer or wine?
Neither.
What do you drink? I want to know what you drink.
I don't really.
You drink at all?
No, I'm like pretty allergic. So yeah. But it's funny because people I've known for a while are like, you don't drink? And they're like, but I saw you at that party. And I was like, stone sober. I just am a little bit strange.
I thought you said like stoned. I was just totally stoned. Really, really stoned.
Really stoned. So there's this where it's like you get high from other people's like feelings. It's like, and I'm always the one who's like, if I'm excited, I'll be up till 5. I'll be the last one awake. I'm like really charged up, you know?
What do you drink, Spencer? You a beer drinker?
Yeah, I like beer is my drink of choice. I'm getting really into just bubbly water with a little bit of lime in it. But when it comes to like alcoholic beverages, I'm a bit of a beer guy. But I like a good whiskey. Yeah,
I picture you in a wingback chair.
Totally
like the kids have gone to sleep, wingback chair, whiskey.
Cigar, whiskey.
Just like one Tiffany light above you. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I like, what do I got? Thai or Mexican? I don't know. Moo juice or nut milk?
What?
Moo juice or nut milk? I don't know why I wrote that. That's just dumb.
I like both.
I just think nut milk is a funny thing.
I know. Can you send me an MP3 of you saying nut milk? I'm going to make it my text sound.
Nut milk. Bee sting or mosquito bite?
You know, I would have said mosquito bite, but I stepped on a bee a couple weeks ago and I got stung on the bottom of my foot. And it was not a big deal. And I will say bee sting.
It was not a big deal?
Nope.
I've never been stung by a bee or a wasp. I
got stung on my hand when I was like 7 and it was like really upsetting and it really hurt, I remember. But then I stepped on a bee and I was like, what did I just step on? And I didn't even know what it was. And the bee was gone. Like it was in the grass, so I'd never found the bee. But there was this weird little thing in my foot. I thought it was a thorn from a plant, but it had this little yellowy goo on one side. I'm like, is that the guts of a bee? And then I Googled and it was. And I just used my fingers and pulled it out. And then I went and ran cold water on it. And like it hurt a bit for about an hour. I could feel a very slight adrenaline reaction in my body from it. And then it hurt slightly the next day for half an hour and then it was done. Whereas a mosquito bite, I'm like, I get these huge welts and they're mega itchy and I can't sleep and they drive me up the wall. I've had a fever from having too many mosquito bites before. So I actually like respond better. I mean, I hope I don't get any more bee stings because I think they're bad. But like that bee sting a couple weeks ago was like nothing.
I like writing some of these questions and then just flying through. I don't know. I don't even have any more. I mean, math or science. I don't know. Who cares? I've got a bunch of others, but I think I want to wrap it up because we've prevailed upon the patience of everybody. For
I could do these.
I could do this all night long. I know this is fun. I love hanging out with you.
But it's surprisingly difficult to do them real quick. Like your brain is like.
Oh, the speed questions. I know they're fun. I like.
Your mouth does things that you're like, what did I just say?
What did I say? Totally.
It's like a fun like a parlor game, you know, like you're hanging out with your buddies and
Why are they called parlor games?
because you do them in the parlor.
Is that really it? Is that all? Is that why they call them parlor games? There's got to be more than that.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe it's like the French parlor, like games that you play with talking. Is that weird?
That was
Maybe, but it.
Maybe it comes from like parlay games, you know, like
that.
you
I
actually
love
just
that, yeah.
say things.
Spencer, what is that thing in the background of your shot, Spence?
Oh, it's just like the thing holding up my house. It's a pillar. It's,
Oh.
But
it's
no,
not
do I see like an exercise bike in the back? Is that what that is on the other side?
Wow, you're looking. Yes, that is an exercise bike in the back.
Ew.
Oh, nice. It's got a stand where you could like put stuff and read, huh?
Yeah. Stick your little iPad and watch a little Netflix.
Oh, look, this is the best one of Spenny so far.
Have I frozen?
Oh no, I lost it.
Oh no.
Good.
I'll do it again for you.
They'll get it on the recording.
So one of the things that I really want to do though is kind of like wrap this up on a bit of an uplifting note. You two are people who who really inspire me and who I often will look to, whether you know it or not, for guidance and inspiration in normal times and weird times. But what I was going to ask you each, and maybe Nicole, you can start, and then Grace, you can wrap us up, is to pass along some wisdom to our audience, to help them kind of forge ahead in whatever these uncertain times, these mutable times, these fertile times, these times that have a lot of potential. You know, like
There you are. You have to figure out like what kind of person do you want to be, and then it's literally just a series of actions to keep like pressing that button to be that person again and again and again. And I feel like if you do that, your life, there's like moments in your life that will be hard because sometimes if you decide you have a set of values and you have to like, you know, communicate them in a situation where the people around you might not share those values, those are stressful moments. I find they get easier with practice. Like I'm way better at having conversations about stuff and like speaking up about stuff than I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago. But I feel like it's really validating to like feel like your behavior is in alignment with your values. And I've had a few times in the last couple of weeks where there's been moments where I've like come to a crossroads where I'm like, am I gonna do that thing? Am I gonna do the thing that aligns with my values, or am I gonna like take the quiet, easy, safe way out? And I've really been challenging myself to like say the thing, have the conversation, engage, and it feels great. It feels good. I'm proud of myself. It's hard and I'm proud of myself. If I feel like if you can do that in your life, like whatever that means for you, whatever your values are, can you put them forward into action? If you do it, it feels really good. That's my advice for people.
thank you.
Your swivel chair. Yeah, I think always remember that you've got agency to do something. And if it's important to you, it's one thing at a time. It's one foot in front of the other. And it is important to realize that sometimes some people can sit back from it. And that is usually because we have a little bit of privilege, but not everyone is in that position to do that. So have a thought, have a look at the world around you. And it's not discounting that your life is difficult and it's not weighing one more than the other, but just that some people have more agency than others. So try to just keep doing one thing at a time. But first and foremost, always make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Because you can't do anything if you don't have the capacity of that in your brain and in your health, and you are the most important thing. You're the only you that we have. So always make sure that you're taking care of yourself first, and it makes you more vital to be able to participate in the world and do amazing things, do all the things that you want to do. So always remember that.
Yeah, and I think there's like an interesting line between like discomfort and lack of safety, that they can feel similar if you're uncomfortable about something, or if you're genuinely in a situation where you're compromising your safety or really compromising your mental health. Superficially those can look similar, but I think I found for me, the more I sit and like think about what my values are, what my response is going to be, what the fallout is, like I've gotten better at recognizing that like there are times when I'm uncomfortable, there are times when a conversation doesn't feel good, but those are not necessarily times that I'm unsafe. or that I'm harming myself. Like, I feel like a lot of growth happens in uncomfortable areas too. So for me, it's like figuring out like, what are the signs that mean I'm harming myself or gonna at risk of harming somebody else, and like that I really need to like stop and reconsider. And what are the moments when I'm pushing myself in a way that's gonna benefit me and people around me. And I think like superficially they both can feel like a pounding heart and a flushed face and a dropped stomach. Like those feelings can be the same, but I think like spending a bit more time looking at them, like there are moments where you are genuinely unsafe and need to stop and back up and take care of yourself, and then there are moments when you might feel like that but actually you're okay and it's social discomfort and you can get past that. And like if you can build that resilience, then you're stronger and more able to go forward and feel empowered in your own life. So like just interrogating that and like keeping an eye on it to make sure that you're hitting the balance that keeps you growing, you know?
Yeah. And for me, it's like also remembering that above all, it's okay to make mistakes. Part of, I think, what is amazing right now is that we can admit that. And I mean, I'm a perfectionist. I hate to put it out there. I don't want to commit it to that, but this is a time when we all need to examine that, and that it's okay. And that's what's the beauty of having these discussions. Not everyone's going to react that way, but I think for the most part, it has started to shift. And it's okay, because it's like when we do that, it gives us space to be able to grow. Without it, you're just hiding in your corner, like the lemur that I was in the dark, you know? So.
With that, guys, I want to kind of bring this to a close, but I really want to thank you both for being a part of this, for being a part of my life, and for doing this tonight, sharing a little bit. And I want to, I don't know, I mean, it should go without saying, but Black Lives Matter, Queer Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, and take care of yourselves. And if you can take care of someone else too, then do that.
Thank you, Cream Puffs. We love you.
Oh,
yeah.
And you guys are the best. Thank you so much for all of the energy and the sharing that you've done and all of the like inspiration that you've given to us over the years. It's been beautiful. And I'm so glad that we're still having these conversations.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Years later.
Yeah. They've changed our lives too. My heart looks like a bum. Why is
your bum looks like a heart?
Well, all right, I'll take it.
Chicken egg.
Thank you for the dance. I wish there could be another, but...
I get it. You gotta leave with the one that brung you.
Would you like to?
Obviously.
Ugh, can we please just move on already?